When a narcissistic man realizes he lost someone who truly loved him, it doesn't happen in one big moment. It happens in stages, it happens slowly, and it hits him when he least expects it. Because listen, narcissists don't understand love when they have it. They understand it when it's gone. For months, maybe even years, he believed you would always forgive him, always give him another chance, always explain yourself, always shrink yourself just enough so he could feel big. He believed your heart would stay on stand by forever, and here's the truth: you taught him how to take you for granted, not because you were weak, but because you loved deeply, and people who love deeply often believe they can fix, heal, or save the other person. But love cannot save someone who refuses to see themselves. So what happens? You finally walk away. You stop arguing. You stop explaining. You stop showing up for your own suffering. You detach. And that moment, that silence, is the first time his world shakes. He doesn't miss you at first. He misses the control. He misses the validation. He misses the comfort you provided. He misses the emotional labor you did for him. But then something powerful happens. He sees you growing, smiling, healing, getting your life back, finding yourself again, and suddenly the person who once made you feel small feels something he rarely feels: loss. Actual, painful, ego-shaking loss. Because narcissists don't think someone like you will ever leave. They assume you will always stay because you stayed before. And when reality hits, it hits hard. He starts replaying memories. He remembers the moments you were patient, the nights you listened, the times you chose him over yourself. He remembers the softness he mistook for weakness and realizes it was strength. But here's the educational part you need to understand. His regret is not love. His missing you is not growth. His pain is not a sign that you should return. It is simply the consequence of losing access to a person who loved him beyond his capacity to love back. When he realizes he lost someone who truly loved him, he doesn't just lose a partner. He loses a mirror, the mirror that showed him his best potential, his humanity, his chance to be better. But by the time he realizes this, you're already rising. You're already learning yourself. You're already free. And the most important lesson: you didn't lose him. He lost you. And that loss was the beginning of your healing, not the end of your story. Because the day a narcissistic man realizes he lost someone who truly loved him is the same day you realize you finally got yourself back. Narcissistic man doesn't realize he has lost someone who truly loved him at the moment you walk away. It happens in a deeper, more psychological way, and it begins the moment your emotional supply disappears. For a narcissist, love is not experienced the way healthy people experience it. They feed on attention, reassurance, emotional labor, admiration, validation, and your constant presence. They depend on it the way a child depends on a parent, not with gratitude, but with entitlement. While the relationship is active, he doesn't register your love as something precious. He registers it as something guaranteed. Your forgiveness becomes expected. Your patience becomes normal. Your care becomes a responsibility he thinks you owe him. Narcissists do not value what they receive. They value what they fear losing, and they do not fear losing you until it happens. The moment you withdraw emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, something changes. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop fighting for understanding, when you no longer respond with the same emotional intensity, that's when he begins to feel a growing emptiness inside himself. A narcissist's self-esteem is not self-generated. It's borrowed from the people who surround him. You were one of the main sources of that borrowed identity. Your admiration helped build his inflated sense of self. Your empathy softened his harsh inner critic. Your presence kept him from facing the truth he cannot face alone, that underneath the ego there is nothing stable. Narcissists don't crave love, they crave supply. And supply looks like support, attention, emotional warmth, praise, loyalty, even your willingness to tolerate behavior that hurts you. When that supply is removed, he feels it instantly, like a sudden drop in temperature. It's not your love he misses first, but the regulation you provided. You helped him feel powerful. You helped him feel worthy. You helped him feel like someone important. Once that disappears, he is left alone with the very feelings he has spent his entire life avoiding: insecurity, shame, inadequacy, fear of abandonment, and emotional emptiness. This realization is not romantic. It's not poetic, it's psychological. Narcissists don't experience loss as "I lost someone amazing." They experience it as "I lost something that made me feel good about myself." And yet, as time passes, this loss deepens. Because the narcissist isn't self-reflective while he's with you. He becomes reflective when he loses access to you. Suddenly, he's forced to face the fact that someone who once gave endlessly is no longer there. Someone who once cared unconditionally no longer responds. Someone who once soothed his emotional storms now prioritizes their own peace. This absence becomes a mirror he cannot avoid. For the first time, he sees what he took for granted, not because he has developed empathy, but because he feels the void of what he depended on. In his mind, losing your love equals losing a part of his identity. He realizes the stability, validation, and emotional warmth he once enjoyed didn't come from him. It came from you, and without it, he feels unanchored, unsupported, and exposed. Ironically, this is when he starts to understand the value of what he had. But the tragedy and the truth is that a narcissist only recognizes value in hindsight. He understands love only when it stops feeding him. He sees your worth only when your presence is gone. Your distance does what your love could not. It confronts him with himself. And that realization is the moment he begins to understand that he didn't just lose a person. He lost the emotional foundation he built himself on. When you finally step back from a narcissistic man, whether by creating emotional distance, reducing communication, or completely walking away, something profound begins to happen inside him. It's not about love. It's not about missing your heart. It's about the sudden collapse of the emotional structure he built on top of you. Narcissists spend their lives running away from their inner emptiness. They refuse to face their insecurities, their shame, their fear of not being enough. Instead of healing, they attach themselves to people who can temporarily fill that void. And without even realizing it, ***, you became one of those people. ***, your presence acted like a buffer between him and his unresolved wounds. Your empathy softened the harshness he feels toward himself. Your emotional availability helped him avoid the darkness inside him. The truth is, he depended on your warmth in ways he would never admit. He depended on your reassurance to calm his anxieties. He depended on your attention to stabilize his ego. He depended on your love to distract him from the parts of himself he cannot stand. And when that emotional support disappears, it forces him into a confrontation he has spent years avoiding. Distance becomes a psychological spotlight. Silence becomes a mirror. Your absence makes him feel the emptiness he has been trying to outrun. Without you regulating his emotions, he is left alone with raw, unfiltered insecurity. Narcissists don't self-soothe well. They don't process pain in healthy ways. They don't reflect inward unless they are triggered by loss. So when you step away, he starts feeling everything he worked so hard to suppress. The fear that he is unlovable, the belief that he is not enough, the anxiety that people always leave once they see the real him. But instead of understanding these feelings as the consequences of his behavior, he experiences them as a shock that comes from losing the emotional safety net you provided. Narcissists talk big, act strong, and pretend to be independent. But emotionally, they rely heavily on the person who gives them consistent attention. When that attention disappears, it feels like a sudden emotional withdrawal. It's a psychological crash. It's the same way a child panics when a parent leaves the room, not because they value the parent's humanity, but because they feel unsafe without the source of comfort. Your distance exposes him. It exposes the emotional hollowness inside him. It exposes how dependent he was on your energy. It exposes the reality he never wanted to face. He needed you far more than he ever admitted. This is the moment when he starts replaying everything. He notices that the messages don't come like before. The warmth in your voice is gone. The eagerness to fix things has disappeared. You no longer absorb his moods, his accusations, or his emotional swings. You no longer carry the relationship alone. And this loss of emotional control hits him harder than he ever expected. Somewhere inside, he begins to realize the truth he denied while he had you, that your presence made his life easier, softer, calmer, and more stable. Now, without you there to cushion his ego or soothe his insecurities, his emotional world feels harsher, colder, and more chaotic. But here's the important thing: he doesn't wake up to this truth because he suddenly develops empathy or emotional maturity. He wakes up because your distance forces him to feel the emptiness he always hid behind arrogance, manipulation, and denial. It pushes him to face the internal void you once protected him from. So the moment you step back becomes the moment he steps into his own unresolved truth, and for him, that truth is terrifying. When a narcissistic man begins to feel the loss of someone who truly loved him, he does not experience that loss the way a healthy person would. A healthy man who loses love feels sadness, reflection, empathy, and an honest desire to understand what went wrong. A narcissistic man, however, interprets loss through a different emotional filter, one rooted in ego, entitlement, and dependency. His regret is not the regret of a man who realizes he hurt someone. His regret is the regret of a man who realizes he lost a source of comfort, control, and identity. This distinction matters because it explains why he often comes back, why he can suddenly act emotional, and why he becomes obsessed with you only after you're gone. In his mind, love is not connection. Love is usefulness. Love is supply. Love is what you gave him: the reassurance, the patience, the emotional presence, the nurturing, the belief in him, the attention that kept his ego inflated. When these things disappear, he does not feel emotional pain out of love for you. He feels discomfort because the system that kept him emotionally stable has collapsed. He does not miss your heart. He misses the way your heart made him feel about himself. This is where the emotional confusion comes in. Many people assume that when a narcissistic man cries, apologizes, or panics after losing you, it means he has finally realized your worth. But his reaction is not born from self-awareness. It is born from self-preservation. He is not processing loss. He is reacting to the loss of control. He is not grieving your love. He is grieving the end of your emotional labor. The validation he took from you was like fuel, and without that fuel, his inner world becomes chaotic again. When he regrets losing you, it is not regret in a moral sense. It is regret in a functional sense. You were useful to him. You made his life easier. You softened his insecurities. You provided the stability he could not create for himself. So when you leave, he feels destabilized. He feels exposed. He feels emotionally hungry. That hunger is what he interprets as missing you. But this is not love. This is hunger for supply. A narcissistic man often comes back not because he has finally realized your value as a human being, but because he realizes the value of what you provided. He returns to regain control, to soothe his ego, to reclaim access to the emotional resources he no longer has. His panic is not the panic of losing a soulmate. It is the panic of losing a power source. He may talk about memories. He may claim he has changed. He may try to mirror the emotions you once wished he had. But his awareness happens only after the loss because narcissists process love backwards. They do not appreciate it while they have it. They appreciate it only when the benefits stop. It is crucial to understand that what he calls loneliness is not the emptiness of a broken heart, it is the emptiness of a broken ego. What he calls missing you is not missing your personality, your dreams, or your soul. It is missing the comfort of being prioritized even when he didn't deserve it. What he calls regret is not regret for hurting you, it is regret for losing a system that made him feel better about himself. In the end, his realization is not a sign of growth. It is a sign of loss, a loss of power, a loss of influence, a loss of the emotional safety net he believed he would always have. And the most painful truth for him is this: once his supply is gone and you rise above the relationship, he realizes that what he lost can never be replaced. But that realization is not love, it is the recognition that he can no longer benefit from a heart he never knew how to value. When you finally stop negotiating your worth with a narcissistic man, something powerful shifts not just in the relationship, but inside you. For a long time, you may have believed that if you explained yourself better, loved harder, forgave more quickly, or changed the way you reacted, then maybe he would finally understand you. Maybe he would finally meet you where you were emotionally. This belief keeps countless people trapped in cycles of confusion, trying to earn from a narcissist what they were always capable of giving on their own: validation, respect, and emotional safety. But narcissists are experts at creating emotional climates where you doubt your own value. They condition you to feel that your reactions are the problem, your needs are too much, and your boundaries are obstacles to their comfort. Every time you tried to address something that hurt you, he turned it around. Every time you asked for accountability, he minimized the issue. You slowly learned to silence yourself just to keep the peace. You became smaller so he could feel bigger. You adjusted your emotional volume to fit his fragile ego. And this is where the damage begins, not because you were weak, but because you were taught to negotiate your worth in exchange for temporary harmony. You lowered your standards hoping he would rise to meet them. You gave him empathy hoping he would grow empathy. You tried to be understanding hoping he would finally understand you. Until eventually, you forgot that your needs are not burdens, they are boundaries. Boundaries that protect your peace, your mental health, your self-respect, and your emotional identity. The moment you decide to stop negotiating these boundaries is the moment everything changes. You stop explaining what should be obvious. You stop apologizing for having feelings. You stop chasing closure from someone who benefits from your confusion. And instead of shrinking, you begin to expand into your own life again. This shift is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is often silent, a quiet internal decision that you will no longer abandon yourself to maintain a connection that doesn't value you. When you make that shift, the narcissistic man feels it instantly. Your energy changes, your emotional reactions change, your willingness to absorb his moods, excuses, and manipulation starts to fade. You no longer feel responsible for fixing him. You no longer carry the emotional weight of the relationship on your back. This is the moment he notices a difference, not because he suddenly respects your needs, but because your boundaries cut off the access he once had to your emotional labor. He feels the loss of power and control. He feels the tension of not being able to manipulate you in the old ways. He feels your self-respect rising, and that is something a narcissist cannot handle because your self-respect interferes with his ability to use you. Your boundaries become a threat to the dynamic that once benefited him. As you reclaim your worth, you begin to see the relationship for what it truly was. A cycle of giving without receiving, loving without being loved back, explaining without being heard. You start to understand that your worth is not something that can be negotiated, debated, or proven. It exists regardless of who recognizes it. And this is the most important part. Healing begins the moment you stop arguing for your value and start acting from it. You begin to prioritize yourself again. You rediscover your voice, your strength, your clarity, and your self-trust. You understand that love is not supposed to cost your mental peace. Love is not supposed to diminish you. Love is not supposed to require you to sacrifice your identity just to feel safe. Once you stop negotiating your worth, you break the psychological contract that allowed the narcissist to take advantage of you. You step out of the role he depended on. You stop feeding the dynamic that empowered him. And in that moment, you reclaim something he never wanted you to reclaim, your power. This is when real healing begins, not when he realizes your value, but when you do. When you finally detach from a narcissistic man, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, something happens that he never expected. Narcissists believe they have permanent access to you. They assume your love is unconditional, your patience is endless, and your loyalty is automatic. They grow comfortable with the idea that you will always be there, even if they fail to show up for you. So when you detach, when you stop reacting, when you stop caring the way you once did, it shakes the foundation of his world. It's the first real consequence he has ever felt. Your silence becomes louder than every argument you ever had. Your emotional distance speaks a truth he never wanted to face. You're no longer feeding his ego. You're no longer reassuring him. You're no longer rising to every bait or defending yourself against every manipulation. And this shift confuses him. Narcissists rely on emotional engagement, positive or negative, because it keeps them connected to you and in control of the dynamic. When that engagement disappears, he feels a sudden emptiness, a loss of power, and a loss of identity. In his mind, your detachment is impossible. He has trained himself to believe you need him more than he needs you. He has convinced himself that you will always choose him, even at the cost of your own happiness. So when you pull back, he experiences it as a rejection of the narrative he built, a narrative where he was the center and you were the constant. Your detachment exposes the truth. He never had the power he believed he had. He only had the power you allowed. And here's the psychological part. The moment you detach is the moment he wakes up. Not because he suddenly becomes self-aware, but because your detachment removes the emotional cushioning that protected him from himself. For the first time, he begins to feel the discomfort, the insecurity, and the vulnerability that you spent months or years shielding him from. He senses the shift in your energy. You're no longer emotionally available. You're no longer impressed. You're no longer affected, and that threatens him more than anything else. Your detachment forces him to confront the consequences of his behavior. He sees that you're no longer giving him the emotional reactions he depended on. He notices you don't chase him when he pulls away. He notices you don't fall into panic when he withdraws affection. He notices you don't explain yourself when he blames you. Instead, you stay calm. You stay distant. You stay focused on yourself. And this change terrifies him because narcissists cannot function without emotional fuel. This is when he starts trying different tactics. He may bomb. He may pretend to be reflective. He may try to guilt you. He may become angry. He may suddenly become sweet again. None of these reactions come from genuine emotional awareness. They come from the fear of losing the control he once had over your heart. Your detachment breaks the cycle he relied on, and he doesn't know how to operate outside that cycle. But here's the empowering truth. By the time he wakes up, it's already too late. You've grown past the version of yourself that tolerated the bare minimum. You've reclaimed your emotional clarity. You've stopped needing his approval to feel worthy. You've stopped sacrificing your peace to keep him calm. You've learned to stand on your own emotional ground without bending to the chaos he brought into your life. Your detachment is not a punishment, it's a rebirth. It's the moment you choose yourself over the pattern you kept repeating. It's the moment you step out of survival mode and into self-respect. And while he may wake up to the reality of losing you, he wakes up too late because you're no longer the person who once begged for his understanding. You've outgrown him, you've healed past him, and the version of you he once controlled no longer exists. This is the power of emotional detachment. It's the moment he realizes he has lost the person he thought he would never lose, and the moment you realize you have finally found yourself. When a narcissistic man finally begins to notice your growth, the growth that happens after you leave, after you detach, after you stop begging for basic respect, it triggers a reaction inside him that is far more complex than simple regret. It is psychological, emotional, and deeply tied to his sense of power. Narcissists build their confidence through comparison. They measure their worth based on how much influence they have over someone else. And for a long time, your life revolved around him. Your attention, your energy, your emotional presence, all of it made him feel superior, important, desired, and irreplaceable. So when the relationship ends, he expects your world to fall apart. He expects you to struggle. He expects you to stay stuck in the pain, stuck in confusion, stuck in self-doubt. He believes that without him, you will remain emotionally anchored to the version of yourself he created, insecure, questioning, trying to prove your value. In his mind, you don't leave not fully, you don't grow not meaningfully, you don't move on not completely. He never imagines that your healing will transform you, or that your distance will elevate you into someone stronger than the person he once manipulated. But here is what actually happens. Your growth becomes the mirror he never wanted to look into. When he sees you rising, when he sees you reclaiming your self-worth, when he sees you smiling without him, confident without his approval, and peaceful without his chaos, he begins to realize something he never allowed himself to consider: you were never weak. You were never the problem. You were never the emotionally unstable one. You were simply giving too much to someone who gave too little. Now that you've stopped giving, he sees the real you again, and that sight becomes threatening. Your growth exposes everything he failed to be. Your emotional stability exposes his emotional immaturity. Your independence exposes his dependency on control. Your self-love exposes his lack of genuine self-worth. Your strength exposes his weakness. Your clarity exposes his confusion. Narcissists don't like mirrors, not the metaphoric kind. Real self-awareness feels like an attack. Accountability feels like humiliation. Watching you rise becomes a painful reminder that he did not break you the way he thought he did. You did not crumble. You did not stay stuck. Instead, you became stronger because of and in spite of what he put you through. This is when he begins to feel the one emotion he cannot tolerate: inadequacy. Your growth challenges everything he believes about himself. If you flourish without him, it means he wasn't as essential as he pretended to be. If you heal without him, it means he was actually the source of the pain, not the cure. If you become happier, healthier, more successful, and more peaceful after leaving him, it forces him to confront the truth he avoided. He was not the prize. You were. This realization brings a unique kind of shame, not the type that leads to self-improvement, but the type that leads to jealousy, resentment, and attempts to pull you back down. He may try to reappear in your life. He may attempt to charm you again. He may try to provoke you just to feel connected. He may act like he's changed, but these attempts are not inspired by love. They are inspired by the discomfort he feels when confronted with your growth. He wants to re-enter the story because the new version of you makes him feel small, and narcissists cannot tolerate feeling small. Your growth becomes a mirror that shows him what he took for granted: your loyalty, your patience, your compassion, your emotional intelligence, your strength. It shows him that the best parts of the relationship came from you, not from him. And it shows him, most painfully, that the person he underestimated was the very person who outgrew him. In the end, your growth does what your pain could not. It reveals the truth. He didn't lose someone weak. He lost someone powerful. He lost someone rare. He lost someone who loved him deeply but learned to love themselves more. And once that mirror is placed in front of him, the reflection is something he can't escape and something he can never replace. Here is a powerful, emotional Mell Robbins style conclusion that ties together all 6 expanded keynotes and delivers a strong, motivational closing. In the end, the truth becomes unmistakably clear. A narcissistic man does not lose you in one moment, he loses you gradually, piece by piece, until the day comes when you finally choose yourself. He doesn't wake up because he has grown. He wakes up because your distance exposes the emptiness he hid behind arrogance. He doesn't grieve your love, he grieves the loss of your attention, your empathy, your presence, and the emotional sanctuary you built around him. But by the time he realizes this, you have already stepped into a new version of yourself, one that no longer negotiates its worth, one that no longer shrinks to make others comfortable, and one that has discovered strength in the very places you once felt broken. Your healing becomes the mirror he cannot bear to look into, because it shows him everything he failed to appreciate. It shows him that you were never dependent, you were giving. You were never weak, you were loyal. You were never lost, you were trying to love someone who didn't know how to love back. And once you walked away, your growth became the proof that he never held the power. You did. Your peace became the evidence that leaving wasn't a mistake. It was the breakthrough you needed to return to yourself. This entire journey is not about him realizing your value. It's about you realizing it. It's about reclaiming the pieces of yourself you gave away trying to be enough for someone who wasn't ready to receive you. It's about understanding that your heart, your softness, your strength, your resilience, all of it was never a weakness. It was a gift he mishandled because he couldn't see past his own ego. And now you stand in a place he cannot reach, a place built on clarity, confidence, and self-respect. The person he lost is not the person you are today. You've risen, you've learned, you've healed, and you've become the version of yourself that you were always meant to be. So let this be the final truth. He didn't break you, he revealed you. He didn't define your worth, he highlighted it. He didn't take your power, he only delayed the moment you realized you had it. And now that you have it back, you are untouchable, you are unshakable, you are whole, and nothing, not even the memory of him, can take that away from you again.